I never expected to be humiliated at my own sister's engagement party. The lights were warm, the smiles rehearsed, and her voice carried easily when she laughed and said I was just admin at a courthouse. People chuckled. Someone clinked a glass. My chest burned, but I stayed quiet like I always did. Then her fiancé turned toward me, studying my face like he'd seen it somewhere before. "So, what do you actually do?" he asked. I didn't explain. I didn't defend myself. I said one word. And what happened next wasn't loud, dramatic, or messy. But it changed how my family looked at me forever. My name is Verity. And for as long as I can remember, my family has loved neat labels. The kind you can say quickly at dinner, the kind that don't invite follow-up questions. My sister Evelyn was always the impressive one. Ambitious, charismatic, the kind of person who could walk into a room and make it orbit around her. And me, I was the quiet one, the reliable one, the one who worked at the courthouse. That phrase followed me everywhere. Thanksgiving tables, birthday dinners, casual phone calls with relatives who hadn't seen me in years. "So, you're still doing admin work?" they'd ask, smiling like they were being kind. I'd nod. "Yeah, still there." And the conversation would move on. What they didn't see was how carefully I'd learned to stay invisible around them. Not because I was ashamed, but because every time I tried to explain, their eyes glazed over. I learned early that my accomplishments made people uncomfortable, especially Evelyn. So I softened my words, rounded the edges, let them believe the smaller version of me, because it kept the peace. At home, the pattern never changed. Evelyn talked. Everyone listened. My parents leaned in when she spoke about her work, her milestones, her plans. When I spoke, forks scraped plates, someone reached for more wine. It wasn't cruelty, it was habit, and habits are hard to break. There was only one person who ever looked at me differently. My cousin Lily. She noticed the late nights, the way I carried myself, the way my phone buzzed at odd hours. She knew the truth even when I never said it out loud. Sometimes she'd squeeze my hand under the table like she was reminding me I wasn't invisible everywhere. I told myself I didn't need validation from my family. I told myself their opinions didn't matter. But that was only half true because every time Evelyn laughed at my courthouse job, something inside me tightened. Not anger, not yet. Something quieter. Something heavier. By the time her engagement party came around, I already knew how the night would go. I'd arrive early. I'd help where I was needed. I'd smile when introduced. I'd leave before anyone noticed I was gone. I didn't expect respect. I didn't expect curiosity. What I didn't expect was to be cornered by a question that refused to let the lie survive another minute. The engagement party was exactly what you'd expect from Evelyn. Picture perfect, overdone, and carefully designed to impress. String lights stretched across the backyard like a stage sunset. White flowers everywhere. A banner with their names hung so high it felt like it was watching us. I arrived early because that's what I always did. Before I could even set my purse down, my mom handed me a stack of napkins and pointed toward the drink table. "Can you help over there?" she said, already turning away. No eye contact, no question mark. By the time guests started arriving, I'd already refilled ice twice and wiped down a counter no one had used yet. I told myself it was fine. I was used to this role. Useful, quiet, out of the way. Then Evelyn arrived. She stepped out of the car, glowing, diamond catching the light as if it had its own spotlight. People gathered around her instantly. Compliments flew. Cameras flashed. Her fiancé Daniel followed close behind, polished, calm, smiling. Like someone who knew how to hold a room without trying too hard. He shook hands, thanked people, listened more than he spoke. At first, he barely looked at me. Evelyn made sure everyone knew how successful he was. Big wins, big payments, big numbers that sounded impressive but blurred together after a while. My parents beamed like they'd had a hand in it. I stood near the edge of the crowd, champagne untouched, watching the same story I'd seen my whole life play out again. Then Evelyn noticed me. "Come here," she said, waving me over like an afterthought. "I don't think everyone's met my sister." She wrapped an arm around my shoulder and smiled wide. "This is Verity. She works at the courthouse." A few polite nods. Mild interest. She's just admin, Evelyn added, laughing. Keeps things organized. Answers phones. You know how it is. Someone chuckled. Another person smiled like that explained everything. I felt the familiar heat rise in my chest. The old instinct kicked in to smooth it over, to stay quiet, to let it pass. I looked down at my glass and took a slow breath. This wasn't new. This was just louder. But Daniel didn't laugh. He was watching me now, really watching. His smile faded just slightly. His eyes searched my face like he was flipping through memories that didn't quite line up. I saw the moment of hesitation, the pause that didn't belong. Dinner was announced, and we moved to the table. I took a seat near the end, exactly where I was expected to be. Toasts were made. Evelyn soaked it all in. Then she raised her glass again. Some people argue important cases, she said, nodding toward Daniel. And some people answer phones. Right, Verity. Her eyes flicked toward me, daring me to react. That's when Daniel turned fully in his chair and looked straight at me. Wait, he said slowly. Verity, what exactly do you do at the courthouse? The table went still. Every eye shifted in my direction, and suddenly there was nowhere left for the lie to hide. For a moment, no one spoke, not because they were being polite, but because the question didn't fit the script. It hung there awkward and exposed like a wire pulled loose from the wall. I felt every pair of eyes on me, felt the weight of years pressing into my shoulders. I didn't answer right away. I looked down at my hands resting on the table. One thumb traced the rim of my glass. The wood beneath my fingers was cool, solid, real. I could hear the low hum of the outdoor lights, the faint clatter of dishes from the kitchen. Life continuing even as something quietly cracked open. In that pause, 1,000 small moments rushed in. Every holiday where I'd been asked to help set up. Every dinner where my work was summarized into a single word that made people comfortable. Every time I'd chosen silence because it seemed easier than watching disappointment flicker across my parents' faces. I remembered standing in my apartment late at night, shoes still on, rereading notes, preparing for another long day, knowing none of it would ever be mentioned at the table. I realized something then. I hadn't been protecting them by staying quiet. I'd been protecting the version of me they preferred, the smaller one, the one who didn't challenge anyone's pride. Across from me, Evelyn was smiling too hard. Her jaw was tight, eyes sharp, like she could sense the shift, even if she didn't understand it yet. My mother stared at her plate. My father reached for his glass and stopped halfway, unsure. Daniel was still watching me, not impatient, not mocking, just waiting. The old instinct told me to soften it, to say something vague, to keep the peace one more time. But another feeling rose up, calm and steady. Not anger, not revenge, clarity. If I spoke now, the truth would land. If I stayed silent, the lie would keep living, and I would keep shrinking to make room for it. I understood then that this wasn't about embarrassing my sister or proving anything to a table full of people who had never really asked. It was about refusing to disappear anymore. I straightened slightly in my chair, set my glass down. The sound was small, but it cut through the quiet. My heartbeat slowed. The fear I'd carried for years loosened its grip just enough. I looked at Daniel first, then at my parents, then finally at Evelyn. And I knew whatever came next, there was no going back to who I'd been before this question. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't smile. I didn't explain. I said one word. Judge. It landed softly, almost politely, but the effect was immediate. The air shifted, not dramatically, no gasps, no shouting, but like someone had turned off the background noise of the world. Conversations died mid-breath. Forks paused halfway to mouths. Even the string lights seemed to hum louder in the sudden quiet. For a second, no one moved. My mother's face drained of color so fast it startled me. Her lips parted, then closed again like she was searching for a sentence she'd never rehearsed. My father blinked hard, his hand tightening around his glass before setting it down carefully as if it might shatter if he wasn't gentle. Evelyn laughed. It came out sharp and brittle. "Oh my God," she said, waving a hand. "Very funny." I didn't look at her. I kept my eyes on Daniel. He hadn't laughed. He hadn't moved at all. His expression had changed in a way I recognized instantly. Not confusion, not anger, but recognition finally snapping into place. He leaned back slowly, studying me like he was reassembling a memory piece by piece. "Judge," he repeated quietly. Then his eyes widened just a fraction. "Verity Cole," he said, "the courthouse downtown." No one breathed. "You presided over my case last year," he went on. "The one with the corporate dispute. I stood in front of you more than once." The silence deepened, heavy and undeniable. Evelyn's smile froze. "What are you talking about?" she snapped, turning toward him. "She works admin. She answers phones. You've met her like twice." Daniel didn't look at her. "I know what admin work looks like," he said calmly. "And I know what a judge looks like." He looked back at me. "You were fair, direct. You didn't grandstand. You listened. That's why I remember." My father finally found his voice. "You're a judge?" he asked, disbelief thick in his tone. "Since when?" "3 years," I said evenly. My mother shook her head, as if the word itself didn't make sense. "But you said you were assisting someone." "You said." "I was," I replied. "At the beginning. No one ever asked after that." That was when it hit them. Not all at once, but slowly, painfully. The realization that the story they'd been repeating for years hadn't been corrected, not because it was true, but because it was convenient, because it didn't threaten the balance they were used to. Evelyn pushed her chair back slightly, eyes darting between faces. "This is ridiculous," she said. "You let everyone believe you were admin."
Who does that?
I met her gaze for the first time. "I didn't lie," I said. "I stopped correcting you." Her face flushed. "You did this on purpose," she snapped. "You waited until my engagement party to embarrass me." I shook my head. "You embarrassed yourself. I answered a question you asked in front of everyone." She turned to Daniel, her voice rising. You knew she was a judge, and didn't tell me." "I didn't know," he said. "I never connected Judge Cole to your sister. You never said her last name. You never let her speak." That landed harder than anything I could have said. Around the table, reactions rippled outward. My uncle stared at his hands, muttering something under his breath. My grandmother reached across the table and squeezed my wrist gently, like she'd been waiting for this moment longer than anyone. "I always knew," she said softly. "You carried yourself differently." Evelyn stood up, so abruptly her chair scraped against the stone patio, the sound slicing through the stillness. "This is my night," she said, her voice shaking now. "And you've ruined it. You always do this. You always find a way to make it about you." I stayed seated. I didn't say anything. I replied calmly. "Until you mocked me. Until you reduced me to a joke in front of your fiancé and our family. That wasn't accidental. That was a choice." Her mouth opened, then closed. For the first time, she didn't have a ready comeback. Daniel stood slowly. "Evelyn," he said carefully, "the way you spoke to her." She cut him off.
"Don't.
"You're supposed to be on my side." "I'm on the side of the truth," he said. "And I don't know how I missed this. How I let you talk about your own sister like that." That was the moment it broke. Not loudly, not explosively, but completely. Evelyn looked around the table and realized the orbit had shifted. The attention she'd always commanded wasn't hers anymore. No one was laughing. No one was defending her. Even my parents sat frozen, caught between the daughter they'd always praised and the one they'd never truly seen. "This is unbelievable," she whispered. "You think you're better than me now?" I shook my head.
No.
"I think I finally stopped pretending to be less." She stared at me for a long second, something raw and frightened flickering behind her anger. Then she turned and walked inside, heels striking the floor like punctuation marks at the end of a sentence. Daniel hesitated, looked at me. There was conflict in his eyes, but also respect. "I need to talk to her," he said quietly. I nodded. After they left, the table stayed silent. Champagne went warm. Plates sat untouched. My mother finally reached for my hand. "Why didn't you tell us?" she asked, her voice small. I didn't pull away. Because every time I try to be seen, I said, you looked away. No one argued with that. And in that stillness, I felt something unfamiliar settle in my chest. Not triumph, relief. Like I'd finally set down a weight I'd been carrying for years and realized I didn't have to pick it back up. The next morning, I woke up to a quiet phone and a strange sense of calm. No dread, no replaying the night in my head, just sunlight through the blinds and the steady hum of the city outside my window. Then the messages started coming in. Missed calls, long texts, short apologies that felt clumsy but sincere. Relatives who suddenly wanted to catch up. My parents left 2 voicemails. I listened to neither. Around midday, there was a knock at my door. It was Daniel. He looked tired, like someone who hadn't slept, but had done a lot of thinking. We sat at opposite ends of my couch, coffee cooling between us. He didn't make excuses. He didn't defend her. I can't unsee it now, he said. The way she spoke to you, the way everyone let it happen. I nodded. There wasn't anything to add. I don't know what this means for us yet, he admitted. But I know I can't ignore it. When he left, the apartment felt lighter. Not empty, just honest. A few days later, Evelyn showed up unannounced. No makeup, hair pulled back, the version of her that never appeared at family gatherings. We didn't hug. We didn't fight. I was scared, she said finally, of being ordinary, of being second. I believed her. I'm not here to compete, I told her. I never was. She nodded slowly, like she was hearing that for the first time. We weren't suddenly close. Nothing was fixed overnight. But something had shifted. My parents started asking questions and actually waiting for the answers. Lily smiled at me across dinner tables, and for the first time, I didn't feel the need to explain myself at all. I used to think staying quiet was the same as being kind. I was wrong. Silence didn't protect anyone. It just taught people how small they could make me. The truth is, you don't owe anyone a smaller version of yourself just to keep the peace. If you've ever been there, hiding your growth so others feel comfortable, you're not alone. Share your story in the comments. And if this resonated with you, hit subscribe. You deserve to be seen.